Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to take a comprehensive look at Georgia Tech's registration process. We'll start with an overview of the entire process, move on to finding out what your degree requirements are, finding actual classes to register for, registering for those classes, and then look at what happens after registration. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right into the video. Georgia Tech's registration process is composed of two different phases. And those are just the different times that registration occurs. So phase 1 is the primary registration phase, and that's where everyone first starts registering for those classes. And phase 1 is your more traditional registration. Everyone's assigned a time ticket, and that is when you get to start registering for classes. And those time tickets are based off of how many credit hours you've already completed. What that all means is basically seniors can register before juniors can register before sophomores, etc. The more credits you have, the more priority you get in registration. What that ends up effectively meaning is that you're registering for classes at the same time as other people who are vying for similar classes as you. And phase 1 occurs the semester before, so for fall classes, people who are continuing at Tech will register during the spring, transfers and freshmen will register in the summer, and then same for spring semester registrations in the fall. Once phase 1 is over, and that'll happen weeks to months before the actual semester, then you don't get to register for a little while, there's a little bit break, and then comes phase 2. And phase 2 is the traditional add drop period at universities, and that is the first week of classes during the semester. So during that, you get another chance. You can either leave your classes how they are, you can shift it around, you can drop out of a class and swap it for another one if you don't like it without any penalties. And that runs again the first week of the semester. There are different restrictions in different phases. Most of those get lifted during phase 2, but we can talk about those more later. But just to summarize, there's phase 1, and that's the traditional registration period. And then phase 2 is where no restrictions are there anymore. Everyone is vying for the same seats. Everyone's going at the same time. And that's where you can either change things up or leave it be during the kind of add drop period. Now that we know a basic overview of how registration works, let's look at how you know what classes you actually have to take. And disclaimer, this is not official advice, this is just my personal experiences. Definitely talk to your advisor and work things out specifically for you, especially if you have any questions. But in my personal experiences, this is what I have done. And the first thing, and probably the easiest thing to determine what classes you need, especially coming in as a first year because you'll probably be taking core requirements anyway, is to just go to Google, look up Georgia Tech degree requirements, followed by your major. So I'm a CS major, so if I look Georgia Tech degree requirements for computer science, it'll show me a list of the core requirements, and that's probably the stuff that you'll be knocking out your first year anyway. So if you're stuck and you can't find anything else, just look up the core requirements for your specific major. But beyond that, there are a lot of awesome tools that are provided to help you figure out what classes you need to take. The first Georgia Tech provided tool is called DegreeWorks, and this is where you can see every requirement for your entire degree. It's called a degree audit. So let's look at how we get there. We go to Buzzport first, log in, and then go down to DegreeWorks. And when you're there, this will show every class that you've taken, every credit that you've earned, and every credit that you need to graduate. So if I scroll down on this page, the green is completed classes, the red are classes that I need to do, and the blue little tildes are classes that I am currently in progress or signed up for. So I can scroll through this and see exactly what courses I need to complete my graduation requirements. Another great tool within this is a what if. So at least for CS majors, there are different threads. So I can click on computer science as my major, and then I can scroll down to the thread that I'm interested in. I can click on that, and if you haven't already chosen a thread, you can process this as a what if. And this also works for minors, major switches, anything that you want to process. And then you can see what classes you will need to complete that. So it added these classes to my degree audit, and it also will say how many credits you still need to graduate. So this is a really awesome tool and will help you drill down to exactly what classes you need. But once you have something like this, there are a couple other things that I'd recommend. And the first is to make a graduation plan. I don't personally do this, but I know a lot of people who swear by it, and that's basically going on an Excel spreadsheet and planning out, okay, this semester I'm going to take these classes, this semester I'm going to take these classes, this semester I'm going to take these classes, and so on, all the way until graduation. That's a really awesome tool and can really help you stay on track and determine what classes you need to take, how many credits you need to take, and so on. But my approach is a little bit different. So instead of a detailed 4-year plan, what I do is compile a classes to take spreadsheet. And what this includes is every course that I will need to graduate. So the reason I do it this way is, in my mind, if I have the choice between Humanities A or Lab Science B, and one fits better in my schedule, as long as it's not a prerequisite for something else, then I really don't care where it fits in my schedule. So in this spreadsheet, I have a list of my core requirements, I have a list of some classes I can take, I have a list of what fits in my threads, as well as what their prerequisites are, kind of try and plan out when I'm going to take them, but this is always kind of shifting and changing. And the reason I like this is sometimes you can't get the exact classes you want. So with this, I can easily swap in one class for another and try and just mesh together different plans of what I can take. Another tip that I recommend is to look at how many credits you come in with and then how many credits your degree is going to take. And then you can kind of do the math of how long you want it to take to graduate and how many credit hours you have to take each semester. I know that I'm probably going to be here for 4 years. That's my intended graduation date, total time. So I know that I have 5 more semesters after this fall to complete 58 credits. So I can do the math on that as long as I don't add anything else, and I probably will, but that just kind of gives me a mental picture of how many credits I need to take to stay on track. Again, full time is 12 credit hours, so as long as you're over that, you're good. I know people who have gone up to 21, I know people who take 12. It really just depends on what your personal preference is and what else you want to do. Look at a comprehensive look of your schedule, your responsibilities, your time commitments, and just figure out what works for you. That is not something I can tell you to do. That is just something you're going to have to figure out over time for yourself. But I would recommend some sort of spreadsheet, either a 4-year plan or, like I have, a classes to take spreadsheet, and that'll really help you plan out what you need to take to stay on track. Now that we know what courses we need to graduate, let's actually go into finding specific courses to take for a semester of registration. And the first tool and the most obvious tool to use is Georgia Tech's Oscar tool, which is the actual registration system. So to get there, we'll go to Buzzport again, click on registration, and of course log in, and then we'll click on registration again. And then there are a few different ways you can look up classes. And my preferred way is to click look up classes. So you'll select a term, and I'll do fall of 2020, click submit, and then you are presented with subjects. So for me, I will go ahead and look up computer science classes, and then when you click course search, that'll show you every single class that is available under that domain. So if you look up accounting, it'll show you all the accounting classes. Chem, it'll show you all the chemistry classes. English, all the English classes. I think you get the point. So let's go, I'll just do computer science, and I'll do intro to computing. And when I click view sections, that'll show me every single section of that course for the selected term. So in this case, fall of 2020. And what this will show is the CRN number, which is like the unique ID for the class. And we'll take note of that later. That is probably the best way to register for a class. Then you see the subject, the number, the section, which will be important in a little bit. And then the campus, something else, the number of credits, the title, days, time, and then you see the class capacity, how many have already signed up for it, how many seats are remaining, waitlist capacity, actual remaining, instructor, location, and attributes. So there's a lot to digest on this screen, but the most important is looking at the time, days, and instructor, as well as, of course, how many seats are actually remaining. Some classes also have either a recitation, studio, or lab attached to them. So your science courses will have a lab attached to them. A lot of the computer science classes will have a recitation, and then your math classes will have a studio. And what that means is with the actual course itself, In some cases, with a lab or studio, you have to sign up for the other little section. It could either be a testing period or, like the lab says, a lab. For the computer science classes specifically, it's a recitation, which is an optional review period, but it's totally free, and if you don't sign up for it, you can't go later. So definitely sign up for any other required bits. For example, here, we could look at section B of Intro to Computer Science, and we see there's a BO2 and a BO4. These are the recitations for that class. So if you register for this class, you should also register for one of these B sections. And it varies by subject how they do the recitation, studio, lab, extra little bit. So just be careful and make sure you're signing up for the attached pieces that you need. But this interface can get a little bit clunky. So that's why there's some awesome, great tools that exist elsewhere to help you register. And the first of those is CourseOff. So you can just look up CourseOff, you see the URL up here. And with this, you can look up classes and put them on a grid of where they're going to fall. So for example, if I look up CS classes and go to 1301, I can do Intro to Computing, and this will show me every available section. So if I click on one and star it, this will put it on my schedule and then let me block things around it. And the great thing is you can make multiple schedules per semester, try and fill different things, and just experiment with different blocks of classes in different places. And on here, you can see how many are registered for the class. Sometimes the numbers vary a little bit, so I always go back to Oscar, the Georgia Tech registration system, and double check on the capacity for the classes that I'm trying to register for. But this is a great tool for visualizing what your schedule will look like. And I'm not going to fill out a full one, but you can stack a ton of classes, do different ones, stack ones on top of each other. And with this, you can also see the CRN number called the reference number on here. And that CRN number is how you actually register for that class, like I said. There's another tool called Coursical, which is very similar. You can add a class to your schedule. You can have multiple schedules. So definitely look up Coursical and CourseOff. One thing with Coursical, I haven't ever used it, but I've heard some great reviews about it. It will send you a push notification when seats in a class open up, which is an awesome tool. I think you can do one for free or there's a paid version. I'm not really sure, but definitely go check that out, especially for phase 2 when things are opening up a lot. That's a really awesome resource. And then once you have the classes that you know you want to take, what I will do is I'll put together a class registration spreadsheet with those CRN numbers, because that's really the only important chunk of information for each class. When you're registering, you just put in those CRN numbers, and that tells the system what classes you want to register for. So for example, on here, I have different class codes. This is really just for me. I know it looks like a huge complete mess on this spreadsheet, but this is the set of CRN numbers that I ended up registering with. I had backup, stuff like that. But this just allows me, if a class is taken, if there's a restriction on it, I can quickly go copy paste a new CRN from this spreadsheet without having to use any sort of graphical interface or push between different schedules or anything. It's all right here. And the reason I think that's important is when you get your time ticket and registration opens up, there will be a ton of other people at that same time ticket. Time tickets are released at either 8 a.m. or 12 p.m., I believe. So say you're at 8 a.m. one day, well, there's gonna be hundreds of people registering for classes at 8 a.m. So you gotta be quick, you gotta go, and if a class isn't there, you have to be ready to sub in another one. While you're looking for classes, there are also some great tools to find out which section you want. The most important thing is making sure you can get the classes and they line up well, and figuring out what time you want to register for classes. And again, that's all really up for you. But if you have the option, you might as well look into your professors. So there's obviously tools like Rate My Professor. I'm sure you've heard of that. You can search for a professor in school and read reviews about them. It can be helpful. Sometimes you get a lot of people who are just upset about their professor, so your mileage may vary, but definitely something to look into if you're worried about your professor. But an awesome tool that Georgia Tech has is Course Critique. So I'll have this link down below, but for this, you can search for any class. So for example, if I do CS 1301, I can click on that, and it will show me every professor that's ever taught that course, as well as, and here's the kicker, their grade distribution. and you can sort by GPA. You can see which teacher gave the highest grades, which teacher gave lower grades, and that's another awesome resource to see what your projected grade might be in that class. You can see overall, you can really dive into specific professors, see per class breakdowns, and this is a really great tool to determine a tie between two different professors when Rate My Professor isn't too helpful. So Rate My Professor and Course Critique are definitely recommended. And then I just put the ones that I want on a registration spreadsheet and get ready for my time ticket to be released, because that is when you just want to go, go, go. You don't want to be messing around when your time ticket opens up. All right, the time has come. Your time ticket is approaching, and it is time to actually register for your classes for the semester. So the first step is you're going to want to go back to Buzzport, go to registration under Oscar, click on registration, and then you will go to add drop classes and select your term. This won't let you open it up until your exact time ticket comes. So be on this page ready to click add drop classes right when that time ticket clicks. Have your spreadsheet or whatever you use with all the CRNs ready. And when your time comes, this is what the page will look like. You won't have any of these classes. These are the ones I'm currently registered for, but you will see an add classes worksheet. And this is where you will enter in any CRNs that you want to add. So I have my spreadsheet here, and as quickly as possible, I'll copy and paste my CRN numbers in here. Once I get all of them in, obviously you want to try and be as fast as possible. You'll type in the CRNs and then hit submit changes. And that's when you'll actually register for the classes, and they will show up on your current schedule with a status. One thing you need to be really careful about is registration restrictions. So what those mean is, say there's a major restriction. That means only a certain major can get into a class. Or there could be a class restriction, which means you have to have a certain number of credits before you can register. And if one of those restrictions apply, you will not be able to register for the class. Or if the time periods conflict or something, so definitely watch out. And that's why you want to have those backup classes. Or maybe it's full, or maybe it's just not working the way that you want it. You want to have backup classes that you can come and paste into your CRN right here and be ready to swap in, because you want to get this done as quickly as possible. There are some other things in the add drop screen that you want to look at. Obviously, what classes you're signed up for, what section, what subject, the CRNs, but really the main thing is registration errors that you want to watch for. And let's go ahead and take a look at how you can prevent those before you're actually registering. So under registration, when you are looking up a class, I'm going to show you one that I actually had trouble with, and that is chemistry. Ooh. One tip, when you're in the lookup classes, you can start typing in the letter and it'll jump to that letter. That's just a little time saver instead of having to scroll through the whole list. But if I course search here and I click on Chem 1212, which is the class I was trying to register for, and then I click on one of these CRN numbers, I can see this is open to chem and biochem majors only. So what that means is only those two majors can register for this class, and it'll also tell you any labs or anything that you need to register on. So definitely while you're writing down your CRNs, this is something I just found out this year, and that is to click on the actual CRN number and you can see any restrictions before you're actually registering. And that's vital because you don't want to find out while you're registering and have to get sidetracked and find something else to register for. You can also go in, if you want to register this way, you can click on the little checkbox by one of the CRN numbers and click add to worksheet, and then that'll take you to that add drop section and put it there. But it's just way more efficient, way faster to copy and paste your CRNs in. Okay, so you've registered for some classes and hopefully it went well, but here are some tips if it didn't necessarily go to plan. So maybe you're like me this semester and you only got registered for 6 hours because you couldn't figure anything else out. Well, don't worry, you have a little while to go and look for other classes to find solutions to any of those little problems. If a class is full or something like that, there are definitely good ways to avoid that by checking out the restrictions beforehand and also by watching the capacity, actual, and remaining right before you actually register. So definitely like 15 minutes before you register, go search through all the classes you want to take. And if they're already full, you can waitlist them, But if the waitlist is full, you just want to keep going back and watching. But after you register for all your classes, you may want to go check sometimes, and maybe a class will open up a little bit. For this example of a class that I'm taking now, it wasn't available when I first took it, but they added another section. So that's also another possibility. So things will shift, and you have time even during phase 1 to shift things around. Like I said, you can get onto the wait list. I haven't personally ever done that, but I've heard of people who have gotten onto classes even from like 30 spots down on the wait list. So it's definitely possible. The way that works is you'll get an email and you have 24 hours to choose if you want to take the wait list position or not. But I do believe you can sign up for something at the same time. And then once phase 1 closes and you have a cement schedule, it may not be finished. And that's why there's phase 2, that's why there's the add drop period. And I know people who change their schedule upside down during phase 2 and just completely change everything. So if you're still curious on different classes, definitely just keep checking in Oscar, keep checking on Course Critique, Coursical. I know they have some awesome tools to notify you when courses open up, but just be really diligent, keep looking, and you definitely have an opportunity to change things around. If there really is a huge problem, and by that I don't mean that you have 8 a.m.s or something like that, you're just gonna have to suck that one up, unfortunately. But if you do have a serious problem, go talk to your advisor and hopefully they can figure something out. Again, with all of this is just my personal advice and experiences. If you have important questions, definitely talk to an advisor about your schedule. One thing I forgot to mention about phase 2 is that the major restrictions and other restrictions are typically lifted. So that means literally everyone is vying for the same seats. There's no advantages. Everyone has that same phase 2 together. So if you can't get into course in phase 1 and there's still seats available, you can do it in phase 2 and things really open up. So definitely don't worry if your phase 1 schedule is not perfect. Anyway, I hope this video helped give a little bit of an overview of the whole registration process. Again, this is just my personal advice. Talk to an advisor if you have any serious questions. But remember, registration's a flowing process. Things will go wrong and you have time to fix them. And there's always that awesome phase 2 to change things up and get that perfect schedule. Anyway, I hope these tips were a little bit helpful. Make sure to go and look through what those different menus looked like again, especially if you're a first year and you've never done this before, because you don't want your time ticket to open up and then you be lost in the system having no idea what to do within Oscar or within the other tools. Also, drop down any questions you have below. I'll try to answer them, but like I said, go to your advisor as well. Also, if you have any other videos you'd like to request, make sure to drop those down below and I'll try to get to those. Anyway, I have a lot more videos to come, so stay tuned. I'll see you guys again soon. Peace out. Bye!